Art Carney, Lily Tomlin, Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman, four of our best actors in three of the best and most original movies of the last decade, but the chances are you never saw them. They were overlooked classics, and overlooked movie classics of the 1970s that nearly everybody missed are what Gene and I will be exploring this time on Sneak Previews Take 2, the special Change of Pace program where we take a closer look at trends and issues in the movies. Across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And this is Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. Now, what we want to do on this show is tell you about some excellent films you may have never heard of, as Roger called them, overlooked classics of the 70s. We want to tell you why they're so good and why they went undiscovered. This is all in an effort to get you to look for these films when they're revived at theaters or colleges or film societies in your town. Now, in addition to the movie The Late Show, Straight Time, and Night Moves, we'll take a closer look at Images, Mean Streets, and now we begin with one of Roger's favorite films, Sorcerer.
You know, Gene, I still can't believe that the epic adventure Sorcerer was so completely overlooked. Now, here was a large-scale, big-budget action picture, lots of fun. It starred Academy Award nominee Roy Scheider. It was made by Academy Award winner William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist and The French Connection, and this movie died a quick death at the box office. The scene we have here is maybe the most astonishing scene in the whole film. It's a combination of desperation, suspense, and great special effects as Roy Scheider and his partners try to maneuver a giant truck filled with nitroglycerin through a hazardous jungle and across a suspension bridge. Sort of a tricky situation. We talked about the special effects. That last shot had some special effects in it, at least three. The guy in the foreground is really there. The truck in the background is a real big model, and then the rain is kind of laid on top of it. So this movie really does have great special effects, but it didn't help it. You can see there that The Sorcerer is on a level way above most action pictures. The movie was a labor of love for director William Friedkin. He wanted to show human behavior at its extremes, men determined to complete a life-or-death mission against all odds and discovering their own limits at the same time. The jungle scenes, the rain and flood, the fire and catastrophe, are among the most exciting movie scenes I've ever seen, but for some reason, the studio opened this movie with a lousy advertising campaign at the last minute. They had no faith in the picture's future. They pulled it out of the lousy theaters they got it into after a few weeks. Sorcerer certainly qualifies as one of the great lost films of the 1970s.
You're right about that. I don't share your enthusiasm for the film. I talked to the director, Bill Friedkin, about it. The thing that he thinks is wrong is what I think is wrong. And the characters seem to me to be a little cold. We notice the special effects. They're so powerful, more than the people in the truck. So we're more worried about the truck than the people. That aside, I still share your amazement. This was a very expensive film, $24 million to make. I'm amazed that it was just dispatched.
So you didn't like it. A lot of people didn't like the picture, but a $20 million picture has to make $45 or $50 million to break even. This one didn't come anywhere close to that. Probably if it made $5 million, it was lucky. You'd think it could make more than that. Just by opening in the first week, people stumbling into the wrong theater looking for Bruce Lee should have made more than that. But the studio simply rejected it. They didn't support it. They didn't tell people it was coming. They didn't care about it.
You had the answer there when you said the studio.
Right.
This picture actually was made by two studios, Paramount Pictures and Universal Pictures. What happened is, I think each studio thought the other guy was going to handle it. Nobody cared enough about it as a sole project of their own. It was dropped in between them.
Okay, so what do people do when a picture like this comes out? How do they know it's good, in my opinion, or if it's bad in your opinion? How do they know about it before the picture closes?
Well, in this case, they had to find it out on their own, because what happened is, here was a picture that also had a very bad title. It was called Sorcerer. Now, Bill Friedkin had made a picture called The Exorcist. Sorcerer sounds like it's another Exorcist pictures. Well, there had been so many Exorcist films right after The Exorcist that when this guy came out, people were, one, fed up with it, or two, they went hopeful that it was another exorcism kind of film. They got there and they saw somebody in a truck. They said, "Where's the devil?" So this film was confusing for that reason. What people should do in something like this is, well, they better read your newspaper.
Read the critics, right.
Real quick. All right.
Okay.
So we really have here a film that virtually no one saw, as is true with our next film, The Late Show. It's about a pair of detectives, one professional, one amateur. Art Carney is the pro, Lily Tomlin is the amateur. She's a wacky, really strange creature, a real space cadet, and he's the solid, plodding professional. They try to find her cat, and they also try to find out who murdered one of his friends, a fellow detective. In the course of solving these mysteries, they develop a tender relationship. A beautiful scene there. Tomlin's performance grabbed an awful lot of attention because it's such a flashy, speedy part. But Art Carney is the one, I think, who really makes this picture sing. He's real, he's tired, but he's always compelling. You know, with him, you don't get the feeling there's a real performer acting up there. It's like you're in the same room with this guy. Very low-level talking, very exciting. He's just a guy alone in that scene doing his job in the great tradition of movie detectives. The Late Show had a convoluted story like old-time gangster pictures. At the same time, it's very fresh, sort of kinky, spicy, R-rated, as it takes us into the netherworld of Los Angeles gangsters. Yet, virtually no one saw The Late Show when it came out in 1977. Like Sorcerer, it certainly is an undiscovered classic of the 70s.
But unlike Sorcerer, it's not really a downer. I mean, when I went to see it, I didn't really know what to expect, but I found myself really enjoying the texture of the film. Every moment was nice. It was a parade of delights as these two characters revealed each other to themselves and to us.
So what went wrong?
I don't know what went wrong. You had Tomlin and you had Carney. Very interesting casting, I would have thought. Both of them, a lot of people don't realize this, very good serious actors as well as being comic actors. What did people think? Did they think it was another detective comedy? The ads had something about a cat in it. Nobody really got the idea that Tomlin and Carney were going to play complex characters who were getting to know each other. Maybe it should have been promoted as a people movie.
You know, what also may have happened is that the studio may have been very confused by it, too. I'm sure when they put together the project and thought, we'll get Art Carney and Lily Tomlin together in a mystery, that it would be lots of fun. You know, maybe like one of those Peter Falk comedy
Neil
things.
Simon things, yeah.
Well, when they saw the finished picture, they must have been stunned, too, and said, hey, wait a minute, where's the laughs? Where's the gags and all of this stuff? And they must have lost faith in the picture and thus not sold it to the public, which, you know, is a sort of the tumbling down theory. Once the studio loses faith in a picture and they don't push it to the public, well, then the public rarely has a chance to see it.
Don't you really wonder why people are so quick to be disappointed in something simply because it wasn't what they expected instead of being delighted that it's not what they expected?
Yeah, people ought to look, maybe what we're saying is not what's not there, but what really is up there.
Yeah, well, anyway, we talked about one Private Eye movie. Here's another one. That's another undiscovered classic. I think that sooner or later, almost every movie director and certainly every major actor wants to make a Private Eye movie, like the last one, like the next one. There can't be an actor in Hollywood who doesn't want to have a little Bogart somewhere in his career. And in 1975, the director Arthur Penn made his gumshoe movie, and the great American actor Gene Hackman played his investigator. Their movie Night Moves is a complex, fascinating kaleidoscope of hidden motives, human jealousy, and greed, and Hackman's need to lead his own life no matter how unconventional it may be. The private eye is always unconventional. Now, this is my favorite scene from Night Moves. Hackman has gone down to Florida to trace a missing person, and he gets in a conversation there with Jennifer Warren, one of his possible suspects. That's a real nice scene, a lot of chemistry there. In a few moments, they have a love scene that'll really knock your socks off. Hackman is always good. The actress is Jennifer Warren. She's so good there. I wonder why she doesn't work more. But you can see there, this is not a movie about where the butler was on the night of the 3rd. It's a movie about how real, sensitive, complicated people are trying to put together the pieces of their lives. And finally, all that's left is Hackman's dogged determination to find the truth. Gene Hackman is a big star, and Arthur Penn has directed 3 big hits, Bonnie and Clyde, Alice's Restaurant, and Little Big Man. But this movie, the movie studio just plain dumped on this movie, Night Moves. It played so briefly, most moviegoers didn't even know it was in town.
And the ones who saw it, Roger, I'm afraid, didn't understand it. I think that may be the biggest reason why it wasn't a hit. I went and saw it. I couldn't figure out the ending. All the people I know had trouble with the ending. You got the ending?
Of course I got the ending. It was very easy for me the 4th time I saw the film.
Yeah, I see.
First 3 times I was confused too, but I think I knew right away the first time that whether the ending was clear or not, this was a movie about how the private eye, Gene Hackman, is trying to find some kind of a line of truth and freedom right down through the middle of the movie from all of these people who are lying to each other, lying to him, killing each other, and trying to screw up each other's lives.
That's the great tradition of detective movies, and also the film came out, I guess, when Watergate was in the air, certainly the Vietnam War, where people were being lied to. So I guess it's a film of the time.
Well, that's the feeling that you got, you know, at the first time. Then the next time through, you say, I can't understand the movie, and then I finally figured it out. If you want to know what happened, there's a guy with a cast on his arm. Hackman sees him through the bottom of a glass-bottom boat and through the water of the ocean and through the window of a plane that's underneath the water. And if you can see who that guy is, then you can figure out how all the pieces fit together.
That's at the end of the picture.
At the end of the picture.
That's at the end of the picture, and I guess he's the guy behind all that's going on in the film.
Right.
You know, this illustrates a problem, though, with Night Moves, and something about the movie industry. The most successful pictures don't take that long to explain, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story about how quickly successful movies can be explained. There was a Polish film crew shooting in Chicago back in 1975 when this picture came out. I went to interview him for my newspaper. I asked the director of the film, what's selling in Poland in the movies? He went like this. The fish that eats people. Jaws. He was talking about Jaws. Well, if a film can be explained that quickly, it's bound to be a hit because one person can pass it to another. The word of mouth is great. When you got a picture like Night Moves, it's very complicated and a little bit confusing. Unfortunately, it may be very good, but it may be doomed to failure, too.
Yeah, I just wish people would sometimes say it doesn't matter if I don't really understand it as long as I like the performances and I got the right feeling out of the film.
Yeah, but well, maybe you've told us what to do now when we see a picture that's confusing. Again, we have a theme running here. Look what's on the screen, not at what you're not getting. Look what you are getting.
Right.
And we got a beautiful film coming up next. We've got a couple of films about detectives, now one about a hardcore criminal. I don't think there's ever been a more real film about a criminal than Straight Time, a 1978 picture in which Dustin Hoffman plays an ex-con who can't stay out of trouble. No sooner is he sprung from the slammer than he meets another con who shoots up some heroin in Hoffman's hotel room. That's a parole violation, and Hoffman's parole officer drops by to check him out. That's a powerhouse sequence. It's so pathetic there when he has to try and justify himself to that little girl and say it's just a game. What went on in that scene is so degrading. We get the feeling that it goes on all the time in the parole system. We all know that jail is no treat, but Straight Time makes the point that the parole system can be just as brutal as jail in its own way. However, this is no bleeding heart picture. It's a fascinating portrait of men addicted to crime. We end up just staring at this picture, seeing the criminal life as we've never seen it before on film. That could have been a news documentary, that sequence. It's so tough. Straight Time is very real, very exciting. It makes the old Cagney and Bogart gangster films seem like musical comedies.
It really does. They play gangsters like they were heroes, or like they were having a good time.
Cagney and Bogart,
right,
yeah.
Exactly. This guy, Hoffman, in this movie, plays a gangster like he's a junkie, as if he has to have a fix of thievery to get through his week, and it's fascinating to watch him. It's all inside of him. He's absorbed in it. He's compelled to do it. Everybody else is...
So the obvious question is, why didn't the public go see that fascinating character? There's a very specific answer to that question. Dustin Hoffman had the picture taken away from him by the studio before he was finished with his own editing of the picture. He threatened legal suit. He filed legal suit against the studio. The studio obviously had no interest in supporting him in the picture. Again, the film was dumped. A few people did see it, some saw it, but basically it was washed away.
It's kind of a sad commentary to think that maybe a studio would rather take a loss on a picture and lose money, their investors' money, their own money, than prove themselves wrong and Dustin Hoffman right by letting the picture become a big success while he's suing them in court.
There's also a problem here, too, I think, and another reason why the film may not have done well. Hoffman did not play the conventional good guy star like, let's say, Bogart. He played a rough character. Maybe the public has to expand its notion of what stars can do in movies. They don't always have to be good guys to be very effective.
You know, that's a thread that's kind of going through a lot of these movies. These movies, we think they were good. They were not successful because they were so different that people thought, well, gee, I don't know if I want to take a chance on that. That's certainly the case with our next film. When director Robert Altman went to Ireland to make Images in 1971, he was at the top of his form. He had a tremendous critical and popular success with MASH in 1970. Now he wanted to make a smaller scale, more personal film. And in Images, he starred Susanna York as a young married woman who became schizophrenic and could never be quite sure what was real and what wasn't, what she'd done and what she'd only imagined that she'd done. And in this scene, whether or not that man really was standing in her kitchen. Creepy, huh? What's going on there? Directors have been trying to portray mental illness for a long time in the movies. Usually they show characters screaming and climbing the walls and bouncing off the ceilings while we see double exposures and whirlpooling images. Well, Altman's Images was a major stylistic breakthrough. He stayed rigidly within Susanna York's own point of view so that we saw what she saw, whether or not it made sense or whether or not it was even there, like that guy in the kitchen. And the movie was massacred by a number of critics when it came out. The Hollywood studios thought it was a chaotic failure, and Images never even received a widespread national release at all. Everybody complained that Altman hadn't made another MASH. So what? Nobody had ever made an Images before.
No, that's a good point. Here was a director trying to take a risk. Dustin Hoffman in the last picture, Straight Time, trying to take a risk. That's why this show that we're doing is very important. We've got to encourage people to go with these people that take risks. Otherwise, we're going to end up always with the fish that eats people.
I wonder whether people haven't just seen so much television that they think that they're supposed to understand every single moment of every movie that they go to see. I know people that were around me when they saw Images and they said, "What's that guy doing in the kitchen? Who is he?" Instead of saying, "This is an interesting development. It's much more interesting than if the husband had gone back behind that wall and it had been him there." I wonder what the director is trying to do. But no, they're angered because they're being challenged.
It turns out, as a matter of fact, that this guy represents some of her feelings about not liking her husband, wanting to get involved with another guy. Altman does give us a good feeling of those moments that we've all had where we wonder, hey, is this all real? What's going on there? So it was a good film, very risky. I'm glad he took the risk for it. I want to see things different from people. You know, I guess I got something about gangster films, because already I've mentioned a gangster film and a detective film, now another gangster film. I love them when they're real. That's the key. Back in 1973, The Godfather was the gangster film, but a little picture came out that reminded us that even great old gangsters like Don Corleone, once in a while, well, they were innocent young men imitating their fathers. The film Mean Streets came out in 73, and it marked the commercial film debut of one of the most talented American directors working today, Martin Scorsese, who would go on to make Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore and Taxi Driver. In Mean Streets, the film I like so much, it wasn't a big hit. It was a dark and personal film, and Scorsese works for the first time with his favorite actor, Robert De Niro. De Niro plays an irresponsible street punk, always in debt, always looking to goof off. He's held in check by the most responsible member of his gang, Harvey Keitel, and their older-younger brother relationship is evident as they walk the streets of New York's Little Italy. A young Robert De Niro, before he was a star, still very powerful. You could see in that sequence with them hitting the garbage cans how they could grow up to be Sonny Corleone in The Godfather and smash somebody with a garbage can. Mean Streets was striking for a lot of reasons. It wasn't clean. It was gritty. It felt like the night it dealt with tough teenage kids who had a view of the world that was get them before they get us, a view of the world that also divided women either into saints or to whores. And sure, those attitudes are juvenile, but Mean Streets made us see how commonly held those attitudes were, and it did it with violence that exploded like a firecracker, just seemingly out of thin air.
I think one thing that you said that's really right was this was a dirty movie. It was a nitty-gritty movie. It felt like the night. People like The Godfather. They might have been murderers, too, in The Godfather, but they wore nice suits while they were killing people. They drove away in nice cars. These were poor kids. The crime wasn't glamorous here.
Yeah. See, here's another director now taking a risk, making a tough picture, not glamorous, like you said. These were rough kids, so when they got frustrated, like all teenage kids did, they didn't do like suburban kids and go to a psychiatrist. They hit somebody.
That's a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Well, they got it out of their system. They were very frustrated, had trouble relating to women, so they would attack them. It was a beautiful film. I guess I wish that they would take more risks and go with the directors.
Gene, what you're really saying is you wish they'd read your reviews.
Yes.
But one thing that happened in this movie, if it came out now, it would have stars in it. Harvey Keitel is fairly well known. Robert De Niro was a big star.
Yes.
What happened with this picture was the public went to it in only moderate numbers, but the industry saw it and they liked it. So
made these guys stars.
Right. So anyway, let's take another look at all of our overlooked classics that we had on today's program. 6 movies that were ignored the first time around and that we hope you don't miss if they ever come back to your town. Maybe they'll come in a revival theater or at your local film society. If not, start a local film society. We began with Sorcerer, a thriller about 4 men and 2 trucks making a mesmerizing descent into hell loaded with nitroglycerin. Then there was The Late Show, a tender and modern private eye movie starring Art Carney and Lily Tomlin as great gumshoes for the 70s. And there was Night Moves, another private eye film starring Gene Hackman in a brooding kaleidoscope of human emotions. Dustin Hoffman portrayed a compulsive thief in Straight Time, a scary study of men addicted to crime. In Images, Robert Altman directed Susanna York in a chilling profile of madness. And our last overlooked classic was Mean Streets with Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro portraying urban punk violence that explodes out of thin air.
Well, that's it for this show. Next time on Sneak Previews Take 2, Roger and I will take a long look at movie love stories through the 70s, at who is falling in love with whom. Until then, see you at the movies.